What if I told you the children Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have shown the world might not be real at all? There are few names in modern pop culture that spark as much controversy, fascination, and speculation as Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Every move they make is magnified under the global spotlight. Every word dissected. Every photograph examined with forensic scrutiny. From their dramatic departure from the royal family to their whirlwind media tour and lucrative deals, the couple has continued to grip the public's attention, if not its sympathy. But in recent weeks, an unsettling and bizarre news story has emerged, one that threatens to shatter whatever remains of their carefully curated image. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. At the center of this storm are their children. Or more specifically, the increasing number of people who are beginning to question whether those children are even real. It sounds like the plot of a high-budget psychological thriller: royal defectors, deep deception, staged appearances, and lifelike child stand-ins. But what once lived only in the murkiest corners of online forums has now spilled into the mainstream thanks to one chilling allegation from inside the cabin of a luxury private jet. A whistleblower, a flight attendant with over a decade of experience, claims that during a transatlantic flight carrying Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and their two children, something was very wrong. The children, if they were children, were wrapped in heavy blankets from the moment they boarded until the moment they exited. Their faces, according to the attendant, were covered or turned away at all times. No giggles, no cries, no fidgeting, no interaction with their parents. At one point, turbulence jolted the plane and sent cups flying, but the children didn't move. Not a single twitch. "I've raised kids," the attendant reportedly said. "That wasn't normal. One of them didn't even blink." When the story first surfaced, it was dismissed by many as just another clickbait rumor in the ever-growing tabloid war against the Sussexes. But it didn't go away. In fact, it multiplied. Other crew members began coming forward anonymously, sharing eerily similar details. One, a technician who handled baggage, described how Meghan personally supervised the luggage and seemed particularly guarded over one crate, one which was oddly shaped, heavier than it looked, and strangely warm to the touch. Another staffer admitted to signing a gag order but confessed, off record, that they had never once heard or seen signs of life from the two young passengers during the entire 5-hour flight. Something about this flight, the silence, the secrecy, the unsettling accounts, has struck a nerve with the public. And in a world where even the wildest conspiracy theories can gain traction, this one has found fertile ground. But what if it's not just theory? What if, beneath the surface of polished documentaries and smiling photo ops, there lies a carefully constructed illusion? As we peel back the layers of this story, a pattern begins to emerge. Not just from this one flight, but across multiple occasions, across multiple locations, and across multiple years. From birth certificate oddities to unexplained absences at major royal events. From cryptic statements made by senior royals to mysteriously blurry or overly curated photographs of the children. Each piece on its own may seem innocent or easily explained, but when viewed as a whole, the picture is far more sinister. For a couple that has repeatedly championed privacy for their children, the extent to which they've shielded them goes beyond the ordinary. Most public figures with kids balance visibility and privacy, occasionally sharing milestones or candid family moments. But in Harry and Meghan's case, even close family members have admitted to never having seen the children in person. Queen Elizabeth is rumored to have met Archie only once. Prince Charles, now king, was reportedly denied access to his granddaughter. Even Prince William, Harry's own brother, allegedly expressed doubts about the child's whereabouts during one private family call, a claim that has never been formally denied. It begs the question, if the children are real, why go to such extraordinary lengths to hide them? In a world obsessed with fame, image, and curated narratives, deception has become a tool, a weapon even. And Harry and Meghan have mastered its use like few others. They've positioned themselves as victims, freedom fighters, champions of truth, all while tightly controlling every visual, every statement, and every interaction the public gets to witness. But no matter how much effort is put into controlling a story, the truth has a way of seeping through the cracks. And this latest allegation may be the crack that breaks the dam wide open. We've all seen the footage, Meghan, carrying a bundle in her arms, walking past photographers without so much as a peek at the child's face. The angles carefully chosen, The smiles frozen. The blankets always thick, always high. In another clip from a Netflix documentary, baby Lilibet is seen only in profile, swaddled and sleeping, or perhaps not moving at all. The lighting is soft. The camera lingers, but not long enough. There's never a natural laugh, never an unexpected moment. Every frame feels directed. When this pattern is combined with the recent testimonies from flight crew, professionals with nothing to gain and everything to lose, the theory that something is deeply wrong becomes harder to ignore. One flight is strange. Two, a coincidence. But multiple? Across multiple locations and time zones, and still no genuine public sighting? It becomes more than strange. It becomes disturbing. We live in an era where visual manipulation is easier than ever. Deepfakes, AI-generated voices, and lifelike prosthetics have blurred the line between real and fabricated. For celebrities with the resources and connections, the ability to orchestrate a narrative, even an artificial family unit, isn't as implausible as it once seemed. And for the Sussexes, a couple who has already broken nearly every royal tradition and protocol, it wouldn't be the first time they upended expectations in pursuit of control. But what would be the motive? Some believe it's about branding, a powerful emotional story of parenthood, loss, and healing. After all, how many interviews have revolved around Archie's first steps, Lilibet's milestone birthdays, or the couple's struggle to protect them from a hostile press? Children are not just family. They are also powerful narrative devices. And for two people whose entire brand is built on emotional storytelling, it's easy to see how two well-placed children could be both a shield and a weapon. Others believe the motive may be darker, tied to inheritance laws, royal titles, or even visa statuses. Having children grants access to different legal protections, different immigration privileges, and different avenues of public sympathy. And if those children were, for whatever reason, fabricated or substituted, the implications would be catastrophic, not just for Harry and Meghan, but for the institution of the monarchy itself. As we begin this investigation, we ask you, the viewer, to suspend disbelief, not in blind acceptance, but in cautious curiosity. Don't assume. Don't dismiss. Instead, follow the facts, weigh the testimonies, and ask the questions that have so far gone unanswered. What did the crew really see? Why are so many insiders breaking silence now? What have the royals known, and why have they said so little? In the chapters ahead, we'll unpack the full flight timeline, examine past documented oddities, bring in expert analysis of public images, and reveal never-before-heard accounts from those who have witnessed the Sussex family up close. This isn't just a scandal about fake children. It's a scandal about power, deception, and the cost of crafting a lie so big, the world never thought to question it. This is the beginning of a journey that may just rewrite what we thought we knew, not just about Harry and Meghan, but about the nature of fame, image, and trust in the 21st century. And once you see the full picture, you may never look at their family, or any public figures, the same way again. It was supposed to be just another private flight. Another routine trip for a high-profile couple accustomed to moving across borders in luxury and privacy. But for the crew working on that particular aircraft, it would become a flight they would never forget. A flight that would unsettle them to their core and leave them questioning everything they thought they understood about Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and their supposed children. The story begins in early spring. The private jet, a top-tier Gulfstream G650, was chartered for a direct transatlantic route, rumored to be from Van Nuys Airport in California to Farnborough in the United Kingdom. On the manifest were 5 passengers, Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, 2 minors listed as Archie and Lilibet, and 1 unnamed female identified as a childcare assistant. There was also the standard 3-person crew, a pilot, a co-pilot, and a flight attendant. Additional staff, including a ground technician and luggage handler, were involved pre-departure. At first glance, nothing about the flight appeared out of the ordinary. The Sussexes often travel in complete discretion, and their security team ensures strict control over who has access to them. NDAs are standard practice. Crew are given minimal information. But there was something different about this flight, and the feeling began almost immediately, not with the famous parents, but with their children. The crew member who first came forward did so anonymously, contacting an independent journalist known for covering high-profile celebrity cases. Their account was detailed, vivid, and chilling. According to this crew member, Meghan and Harry boarded with 2 large, bundled forms in their arms, each wrapped in thick, soft blankets. No limbs were visible. No small faces peered out with curiosity. The children. if that's what they were, remained wrapped tightly throughout the boarding process and were immediately taken to the rear of the aircraft, a private enclosed cabin partitioned off from the rest of the seating area. From there, the flight took an unusual turn. As the aircraft ascended and settled into cruising altitude, the flight attendant moved to offer refreshments and check on passengers, as per protocol. When approaching the rear cabin, they were stopped by Meghan herself, who insisted they would not require any service during the flight. According to the attendant, Meghan's tone was firm, not angry, but final. She told me, "We're all set back here," the attendant recalled. I was confused. It's rare that a family, especially one with two small children, wouldn't need at least water or assistance. But she looked me directly in the eye and repeated it. "We won't need anything. At all." The attendant respected the request, but remained on edge. Something about the atmosphere felt unnatural. The crew reported hearing no sounds from the rear cabin. No crying, no giggling, no movement, not even a change in the ambient noise that usually accompanies babies or toddlers on a long flight. About 2 hours into the trip, light turbulence shook the aircraft. Loose items jostled, a tray of glasses tipped slightly, and a momentary announcement from the cockpit assured passengers that conditions were still stable. It wasn't a violent shake, but enough to awaken or startle any small child. Still, there was nothing. No startled cries. No shifting or bouncing within the cabin. It was silence. That's when I started feeling that something was really off, the attendant shared. I've been on flights with celebrity families before. I've handled infants, toddlers, and even emotional meltdowns. But this was too quiet. Too still. The flight attendant made another pass by the partition an hour later. This time, Harry emerged briefly alone and requested a coffee. When asked if the children needed anything, he replied, "They're sleeping." His expression was described as calm, perhaps too calm. Not the demeanor of a father wrangling two children on a long international flight. The attendant obliged and returned to the front of the aircraft. But the growing unease didn't fade. Instead, it deepened when a fellow crew member, the technician who had assisted with boarding and luggage, joined her in the galley with his own strange account. He explained that during the loading process, Meghan had hovered closely over a particular crate. It was sleek, matte black, and equipped with multiple fastenings. She refused to let any handlers assist with it and insisted it be placed directly under her supervision. While it wasn't suspicious on its own, the crate emitted warmth, like it had been heated or had something running inside it, he recalled. This added a new layer of discomfort to an already bizarre situation. Crew are trained not to speculate or pry into passenger affairs, especially when dealing with high-ranking individuals. But by the time the plane landed in the UK, most of those on board agreed that something was deeply wrong. The final moment that pushed the flight attendant to speak out came during disembarkation. As Meghan and Harry exited, each still holding their bundled forms, she passed within a few feet of the attendant. The blanket covering the smaller bundle shifted slightly in the breeze, revealing what should have been a child's face. But what the attendant saw, or didn't see, was what haunted her. There was no expression, no blinking, no movement. It looked like a wax figure. Perfect, frozen features. Not even a flinch when the cold air hit. She couldn't be certain, but in that moment, she became convinced that she wasn't looking at a real child. Her account was shocking, but it didn't stand alone for long. Shortly after her interview circulated through encrypted journalist networks, another flight crew member from a different company came forward. He described a domestic flight chartered months earlier, during which Harry and Meghan were again listed with two minors. His observation mirrored the first: strange silence, refusal of service, and an unnatural stillness from the children. One staffer even joked privately, "I think those were dolls." They had laughed at the time. Now, they weren't so sure. The stories began piling up. A co-pilot, who wished to remain nameless, recalled being instructed not to turn on the cabin camera system that typically records activity in the back of the aircraft. He found it odd but followed protocol. Another attendant on a different flight remembered how a photographer had tried to snap a photo of the Sussex children as they disembarked. Within minutes, his equipment was confiscated, and the image deleted before he could review it. Then came the baggage handler who worked at the destination airport. He remembered how, after the aircraft landed, a team of private security loaded the same matte black crate into an unmarked van before even touching the rest of the luggage. That crate came off first. It was the priority, he said. It was like a VIP on its own. As these stories circulated, social media lit up with speculation. Theories ranged from the bizarre to the logical. Could Meghan and Harry be using doll stand-ins to protect their children's identities from prying eyes? Could these be decoys for safety purposes, a method to mislead stalkers or paparazzi? Those were the charitable interpretations. The more disturbing theories went further. They questioned whether the children had ever existed in the first place, whether the photographs the world had seen were fabricated, manipulated, or taken so sparingly for a reason. Some even suggested the entire narrative of the Sussex children was a constructed story, one that served a brand, but not a reality. And the flight described in this section became ground zero for that theory. It was the flight that shattered illusions. The flight that opened the door to questions that had long been buried under polished PR campaigns and staged interviews. The flight where even seasoned professionals, trained to remain neutral, discreet, and composed, walked away feeling deeply unsettled. It was, quite simply, the flight that started it all. The cockpit of a private jet is usually one of the most controlled and predictable environments in aviation. Pilots and co-pilots are trained to maintain professionalism, stay alert to the smallest technical detail, and never let the personal affairs of the passengers cloud their judgment. However, on this particular transatlantic flight carrying Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and their so-called children, even the most seasoned crew could not ignore what they later described as an atmosphere that was tense, secretive, and unsettling from start to finish. The captain, a man with over 20 years of international flying experience, noted several anomalies in the flight's pre-departure phase. For starters, the flight manifest was locked under a digital access code that even he, the commanding officer of the aircraft, was not permitted to view in full. Only the first names of the minors were provided. No ages, no identification numbers, no guardianship information beyond a vague, under parental care notation. This is highly irregular. Even on VIP flights, child passengers are usually registered with some sort of age verification for security and liability reasons. The pilot, in his confidential testimony, said the secrecy of the passenger data was unlike anything he had encountered before. That wasn't all. The standard pre-flight security walkthrough, a routine in which flight crew inspect luggage storage, emergency exits, cabin supplies, and safety gear, was interrupted by a private security contractor traveling with the Sussexes. The guard reportedly refused to allow the cockpit crew past the rear section of the aircraft, claiming that the passengers required complete privacy and that the area had been cleared. It was an unusual assertion, given that aviation security typically grants cockpit authority over every square inch of the aircraft. But the pilot, not wanting to cause friction with royal passengers, relented, with hesitation. The co-pilot also recalled a specific instruction given during takeoff, that all cabin lights be dimmed, even during boarding and taxi. While not dangerous, it was a strange request. Private flights, especially those with families, tend to keep lighting normal until after takeoff to ease boarding. But this time, the Sussexes boarded under near darkness. Meghan walked quickly to the rear cabin, shielding the form in her arms. Harry followed, head low, carrying what appeared to be a similar bundle. The child care assistant said nothing and sat alone in the middle row, not once interacting with either child during the 6-hour flight. Back in the cockpit, the tension didn't ease. The aircraft's internal monitoring system, which includes basic cabin video feeds for safety, was mysteriously disabled before takeoff. The pilot later confirmed this was done remotely by someone with admin-level clearance. He requested technical assistance from the ground crew, but was told the issue would be resolved after landing. It never was. The entire flight was made without visual access to the passenger cabin. This lack of surveillance may not raise eyebrows in a commercial flight scenario, but on a private charter with minors, it breaks from protocol. The captain noted that he had flown celebrities before, rock stars, politicians, and even foreign dignitaries. Privacy was always a priority, but never at the expense of basic oversight and safety. In this case, the cabin became a sealed-off zone, shielded from even the pilot's eyes. About 90 minutes into the flight, the co-pilot glanced back through the partially open partition and noticed the rear cabin was entirely covered by a thick, opaque curtain. That curtain had been drawn by Meghan within minutes of takeoff. The crew had no visibility to the rear. No sound, no movement. It was as if the back of the aircraft had vanished. And that's when the oddities became unavoidable. The flight attendant, positioned at the front galley, was tasked with preparing meals and drinks. After an hour, she knocked gently on the partition wall and asked if anyone in the rear required service. Harry appeared from behind the curtain. His demeanor was described as blank, neither friendly nor rude, just subdued. He said they needed only 2 bottles of still water and then disappeared behind the partition once again. The attendant noticed he was not holding either child. She heard no noise behind the curtain, not even a murmur. In a candid aside to the co-pilot, she whispered, "I think something's wrong. I haven't heard a single peep from either child since they boarded. It's eerie." The co-pilot shrugged it off at first, but later admitted he, too, had begun to feel like something wasn't right. Midway through the journey, turbulence hit, light at first, then stronger. Nothing dangerous, but enough to unsettle passengers. Overhead compartments rattled. The drink tray shifted. Cups clinked and fell. The flight attendant made a round to check on everyone, including the lone child care assistant seated mid-cabin. She appeared unbothered, strangely calm. Not once did she glance toward the rear cabin or inquire about the children. Her hands were folded neatly on her lap. Her eyes stared forward. The attendant approached again. "Would you like to check on the children?" she asked, trying to prompt some kind of reaction. The assistant gave a faint smile and replied, "They're with their parents. Everything's under control." But everything was not under control. The rear of the cabin remained as silent as a tomb. The most disturbing moment came approximately 4 hours into the flight. The co-pilot, acting on a gut instinct, turned off the autopilot for a moment and walked back to speak with the attendant. He stood quietly near the partition, straining to listen for any sounds, laughter, babble, even adult conversation. There was nothing. "I've flown private long enough to know what a family with kids sounds like," he later shared. "You can hear kids sleeping. You hear sniffling, coughs, shuffling, something. But this was like flying with mannequins." When they finally landed, protocol dictated that the pilot greet passengers before disembarkation. But the Sussexes declined. The pilot remained in the cockpit as Harry and Meghan exited quickly, flanked by security, each still carrying a blanket-wrapped bundle. The child care assistant left separately and entered a black SUV parked on the tarmac. None of the crew saw the children's faces. None of them heard their voices. Not even a final goodbye. Once the aircraft was secured and the crew returned to the hangar, the discussions began. "I didn't want to say it in front of them," one technician confided, "but I don't think those were real kids. The way they moved or didn't move, it was robotic. Like plastic under fabric. The limbs didn't sway naturally. It was too stiff." The flight attendant couldn't shake the feeling either. She reported the incident to a supervisor, not to accuse the Sussexes of wrongdoing, but because she felt morally obligated. "What if those children were in distress and we weren't allowed to help?" she said. "What if they weren't children at all?" The pilot filed no formal complaint, but privately shared his own misgivings. "I've transported toddlers before. You don't forget the weight of responsibility. This flight didn't feel like that. It felt like we were part of something else, something staged." In the following days, the crew members went their separate ways. But the story of that flight, that strange, silent, shielded journey, would haunt them all. It would become the central event that launched an international discussion. A discussion about whether the Sussex children are real. About whether the most photographed couple on Earth may be hiding more than just their family's location. They may be hiding the truth. And that truth, like the silence that filled the rear of that aircraft, is deafening. The troubling details surrounding the infamous flight weren't isolated to that single journey. As more insiders stepped forward and the public began combing through old photos, travel logs, and fragmented reports, a pattern began to emerge, one that pointed not to a one-time anomaly, but to a broader, possibly deliberate effort to shield, distort, or even falsify the presence of Harry and Meghan's children during multiple flights and appearances. To understand the growing skepticism, we must trace the timeline of their travels from the time of Archie's birth in 2019 and Lilibet's in 2021, focusing on the periods where their movements should have included the children, but yielded little to no concrete evidence of their actual presence. One of the earliest flights that raised eyebrows occurred in November 2019. Meghan and Harry were spotted at Vancouver International Airport, reportedly arriving from London for a 6-week holiday in Canada. According to local paparazzi and airport staff who spoke off-record, the couple was accompanied by a small security detail and appeared to have 2 carry-ons and a few checked items, far less than expected for a couple traveling with a 5-month-old baby. A local journalist, stationed near the tarmac, managed to capture a few blurry photos of Meghan stepping off the aircraft. Her arms were cradling a heavy shawl or blanket, but no visible infant could be seen. Harry, walking beside her, carried a small duffel. There were no car seats, no visible stroller, and no baby-related accessories. It was the most minimalist baby travel I'd ever seen, the photographer later said. You'd expect a team of nannies, luggage carts with formula and toys, but it looked like they were traveling solo. This incident would likely have faded into the background if not for what followed. In early 2020, Meghan and Harry made their dramatic announcement to step back from royal duties and relocated to Canada and later to California. From that moment on, every travel report became a point of interest. Where were they going? Who was with them? And most importantly, where were the children? A curious lack of airport sightings followed. For a high-profile family, almost every celebrity flight, even private ones, involves at least one paparazzi encounter. But with the Sussexes, all photos and footage conveniently stopped at the couple. In one case in Los Angeles, a local crew captured footage of Meghan boarding a plane with her team but found no trace of Archie, despite multiple outlets reporting he was traveling with her. Even more confusing were statements from insiders close to the royal family. During the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations in 2022, Harry and Meghan flew to London and were said to have brought both Archie and Lilibet with them. It was to be Lilibet's first meeting with the Queen and the extended royal family. Yet, not a single photograph was released publicly of the meeting. Not one confirmed sighting of the children was recorded. And not a single senior royal, save for possibly the late Queen herself, could confirm having met Lilibet. The press asked questions. The palace remained silent. Harry and Meghan's team insisted privacy. But skepticism grew. A former palace aide, who had been part of the logistics team planning the Jubilee, anonymously revealed to a British tabloid that special seating, accommodation, and childcare provisions were arranged in anticipation of the children's arrival. But they were never used. We were ready for them, the aide said. We had high chairs, security, transportation. But from what I observed, those items went untouched. Either the children didn't arrive or something very strange was going on. In another bizarre incident during their 2023 trip to New York for a humanitarian awards gala, the couple arrived at their hotel with a significant entourage. News outlets were informed that Archie and Lilibet were staying in the suite above theirs. Hotel staff, however, later reported that they never saw any children on the premises. One staff member confided to a fellow employee that the only time they were instructed to prepare a children's room, no children ever checked in, and the room remained untouched throughout the stay. Multiple flight records from the FAA and international aviation tracking databases show flight plans that list Harry and Meghan's private jet movements. Some of these logs show 2 minor passengers noted on manifest forms, but security experts say that this isn't unusual in the world of celebrity travel. Such descriptions can be placeholders or added to throw off press attention. Without passport verification or actual photographs of the children boarding or deplaning, there is no way to prove those minors were actually present. But perhaps the most telling indicator is the lack of even candid, accidental sightings. In an age where a single blurry iPhone photo of a celebrity child can go viral in seconds, not a single member of the public has captured a spontaneous image of Archie or Lilibet in airports, vehicles, hotel lobbies, or boarding gates. All known images of the children are highly staged, released under tightly controlled conditions, or entirely digital in nature. In one photo purported to show Lilibet on her first birthday, the child is seated on grass in front of a perfectly curated garden backdrop. Yet her expression appears fixed, her posture stiff, and her hands oddly motionless. Digital forensic experts online have pointed out inconsistencies in lighting and shadow in many of the released photos. Some have suggested the children's images may have been digitally inserted into scenic backgrounds. Others note that the few photos that show the children partially obscured are taken from angles that would make CGI or manipulation easier to pull off. Facial expressions remain neutral, and in some images, the children do not interact with their surroundings as expected of a real toddler or child. Adding further fuel to the controversy was the emergence of archived interviews with Meghan's own estranged family. In one such interview, her half-sister Samantha Markle claimed to have never received confirmation of the children's existence, aside from what she saw in the media. She admitted to being skeptical. "For all we know, it's smoke and mirrors," she said. "They say they have kids, but where are they? Why the mystery?" Even former close friends of the couple have distanced themselves from the children's narrative. A former aide who worked with Harry during his time at the Invictus Games hinted during a podcast appearance that there were a lot of secrets being kept, and some things the public would never be allowed to see. One detail that caught the attention of international observers was a legal discrepancy involving Lilibet's birth certificate. The certificate, issued in California, had minor errors in formatting that were later corrected. Some analysts noted the suspicious delay in its release and questioned why the couple had waited weeks before making it public, an odd decision given their pattern of controlling every aspect of their public narrative. Was this a sign of a forged document? Or perhaps a scramble to solidify a legal identity for a child who had never been truly seen? Flight crews from multiple aviation companies have anonymously confirmed similar experiences with the Sussexes. "You never saw the kids," one said. "They were there, but you never heard them. Never saw a toy drop. Never had a bottle to throw out. It's like they were ghosts." Another international carrier, based in Canada, shared that they had hosted the couple during the early stages of their move to North America. They reported Meghan arriving with a bulky travel carrier, which she refused to open at security checkpoints. Protocol dictated that the item be examined, but after a heated discussion with security personnel and a brief phone call to legal advisors, the carrier was cleared without inspection. The security team on duty later voiced serious concerns, but were allegedly told to drop the matter. One high-ranking aviation official, who has worked with celebrity security for decades, stated it plainly. "In all my years, I've never seen children as hidden as these." It raises serious questions, not just about privacy, but about whether there's something more being concealed. As the questions mount and the public becomes more aware of these strange flight patterns and travel incidents, one truth becomes inescapable. This isn't just about a single suspicious journey. It's a growing body of evidence suggesting a long-term, systematic effort to control and possibly falsify the narrative surrounding the Sussex children's existence. Whether it's an elaborate misdirection to protect their identity or something far more disturbing, one thing is certain: the story is not adding up. These aren't mere oversights. They are calculated omissions. A child seen only in shadow. A flight manifest that lists names without faces. A 6-hour journey in silence. And a trail of people left haunted by what they didn't hear, didn't see, and weren't allowed to ask about. Whatever the truth is, the pattern now stretches across oceans, years, and multiple witnesses. As the testimonies from flight crew, palace aides, and logistics staff continued to mount, a strange and uncomfortable theory that once lived in the fringes of internet speculation began gaining traction. The idea that Harry and Meghan had not been traveling with real children at all, but with expertly crafted lifelike dolls. It sounded ridiculous at first, absurd, even. How could such a high-profile couple, scrutinized by media and fans around the world, pull off something so elaborate? But as investigators and researchers began to dig into the possibility, they were met with one disturbing realization after another. Not only was it technically possible, it may have been easier to execute than most people think. At the center of the theory are hyperrealistic dolls known as reborn dolls. These creations, which emerged first as an artistic hobby in the early 2000s, have evolved into disturbingly lifelike imitations of infants and toddlers. Designed with incredible attention to detail, reborn dolls are crafted with silicone skin, rooted hair, weighted limbs, and even simulated breathing and heartbeat mechanisms. Some are made to mimic the warmth and weight of a real baby. High-end models can cost several $1,000s, and they're often used for therapeutic purposes, helping mothers cope with the loss of a child, aiding dementia patients, or calming anxiety. But as any technology evolves, so too do its applications. In the wrong hands, tools made for comfort can be used for illusion. And experts now agree, these dolls, when carefully clothed, wrapped in blankets, and kept at a distance, can easily pass for real children in photos or video footage, especially when no movement is required. Dr. Helen Barron, a child development specialist and body language analyst based in New York, was one of the first professionals to raise the alarm. After reviewing publicly released footage of Meghan holding Archie during a trip to South Africa, Barron made a startling observation. "There's a scene where Meghan descends a few steps with the child in her arms," she explained. "But the weight distribution is off. The head doesn't move. The limbs are stiff. There's no resistance or independent shifting, which is typical of even a calm baby. It looked like she was carrying an object, not a living, breathing child." Barron wasn't alone. Digital forensics experts began conducting frame-by-frame analysis of publicly available clips and photographs of the Sussex children. In several instances, they noted inconsistencies that couldn't be explained by lighting or camera angles. One example showed what appeared to be a faint seam line along the wrist of baby Archie in a holiday card image, an error common in early-generation silicone dolls. In another, Lilibet's hands appeared unnaturally symmetrical, her fingers pressed together in a way rarely seen in real infants. Several documentary YouTubers picked up the scent and began producing deep-dive exposés into the theory. One channel, boasting over 2 million followers, posted a 45-minute breakdown titled "The Sussex Doll Conspiracy: Are the Kids Real?" Within days, it had over 12 million views. Comments poured in from viewers who had previously dismissed the rumors, but now weren't so sure. "Honestly, I thought this was just tabloid nonsense," one commenter wrote. "But after seeing the footage of the baby not flinching during a gust of wind, I can't stop thinking about it." Others shared personal stories of interacting with reborn dolls, noting how realistic they felt in person and how easily they could fool someone in a quick glance or a low-quality photo. A few even posted side-by-side comparisons of dolls they owned versus official Sussex baby photos, and the resemblance was disturbing. Adding weight to the theory was the almost obsessive level of control Meghan and Harry had over their public imagery. When they released the first photo of Lilibet to celebrate her birthday, it was through a trusted photographer and posted via their official brand channels. The image showed a child sitting calmly on a perfectly trimmed lawn, bathed in soft lighting, and dressed immaculately. But the child's body posture was rigid, the facial expression neutral, and once again, there was no sign of spontaneous childlike movement or reaction. Another factor that raised suspicion was the complete absence of any sound recordings involving the children. No home video clips with gurgles or laughter. No candid interviews with off-camera coos or cries. In an era where even the most private celebrities sometimes share a brief moment of joy with their audience, the Sussexes had managed to avoid exposing a single frame of unscripted interaction. Technology expert Daniel Weaver, a specialist in CGI manipulation and AI-assisted imaging, believes part of the problem is the increasing ease with which digital content can be altered. "It's not hard to create a composite photo," he said, "and it's becoming harder to detect. If someone wanted to insert a realistic-looking baby into a photo with perfect lighting and minimal motion, the software is out there. Combine that with a lifelike doll for in-person appearances, and you've created a nearly bulletproof illusion." But perhaps the most damning development came when a UK-based journalist tracked down a high-end reborn doll artist whose shop was located just an hour's drive from the Montecito mansion where Meghan and Harry reside. In an anonymous interview, the artist confessed to having sold multiple custom infant figures to a high-profile client known only as R&M, with instructions that the dolls remain confidential and not be displayed publicly. They paid top price, the artist revealed, and the specifications were incredibly detailed, right down to skin tone, hair placement, eyelash length, and weight distribution. "I've never had a commission that's secretive or that expensive." When asked if they believed the dolls could have been used in public, the artist hesitated. "It wouldn't surprise me. I know my work can fool people. That's why it's used in film productions. If someone wanted to carry this doll through an airport wrapped in a blanket, no one would question it. Especially not if the person carrying it was a duchess." There's also a psychological element to consider: audience conditioning. Over time, the public becomes accustomed to seeing only curated glimpses of a celebrity child. If a child is always presented through one or two carefully chosen images each year, the audience becomes desensitized to their absence. The question stops being, "Where is the child?" and becomes, "That's just how they do things." Meghan and Harry have leveraged that psychological loophole masterfully. Supporters of the doll theory also point to inconsistencies in reported physical development. For example, in one image from early 2021, Archie appears noticeably older than his actual age, taller, with more developed features. In another photo, released just 6 months later, he appears to have shrunk or aged in reverse. Similarly, Lilibet's supposed growth trajectory, based on the rare photos released, doesn't follow normal child development patterns. One pediatrician, reviewing the image timeline anonymously, remarked, "If those photos were truly taken in sequence, the child's physical progress would be medically concerning. But more likely, they were taken months apart or not of the same child at all." So, where does this leave us? Is the doll theory simply a sensationalist fantasy cooked up by overzealous skeptics? Or is it a genuine possibility? A disturbing scenario in which two of the most scrutinized public figures have constructed an entire layer of fiction around their family? At this stage, the evidence is circumstantial but mounting. There are no smoking guns yet, but the consistency of witness reports, the technological feasibility, the digital discrepancies, and the absolute refusal of the couple to allow any form of organic interaction with the children all point in one unsettling direction. It is no longer a fringe theory. It is a question that more and more people are daring to ask. Are the children real? Or have we all been staring at silicone? As the public grew increasingly skeptical about the true nature of Harry and Meghan's children, many turned their attention to the most straightforward source of confirmation: official records. If these children were real, surely the public documents and legal filings associated with their births would provide solid proof. After all, a child's legal existence begins with a birth certificate. However, the deeper people looked into the public record, the more confusion they found, and what should have offered clarity instead revealed a disturbing lack of consistency, detail, and transparency. Let's begin with Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor, the firstborn child of Harry and Meghan, reportedly born on May 6, 2019. Traditionally, royal births are announced formally, with a public display of the birth certificate and confirmation by royal doctors. With Archie, things were markedly different. From the outset, Meghan and Harry made it clear they would not follow standard protocol. There would be no immediate photo outside the hospital, no public arrival by royal midwives or obstetricians, and certainly no window into the birth itself. When the birth certificate was finally released by British authorities weeks later, it only added to the questions. Listed as the place of birth was the Portland Hospital in London, an elite, private facility known for celebrity clientele. But what stood out most wasn't the location. It was the delay in the record being released, the redactions, and the peculiar edit that followed. Initially, Meghan was listed as Rachel Meghan Markle, Princess of the United Kingdom. Later, this was amended by request to simply Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. Why the sudden correction? Royal watchers and legal analysts speculated that it may have been an attempt to erase any indication of Meghan's American name from the formal record, or an effort to align the document more closely with palace expectations. But the reasoning was never publicly clarified. Further scrutiny came when questions were raised about the attending medical staff. Royal births usually involve the Queen's trusted gynecologists and royal-approved physicians, who sign off on the birth certificate. Yet in Archie's case, there were no signatures from known palace doctors. In fact, no medical staff were formally named at all. That omission, to many, felt glaring. If this were simply an effort to maintain privacy, why release the certificate at all? And if the record was being shared, why redact or obscure basic information that would have put public concern to rest? Even more curious was the way the couple handled the press surrounding the birth. Rather than announcing the labor in real time, they waited nearly 10 hours before revealing that Meghan had given birth. No paparazzi were seen outside the hospital. No nurses or midwives came forward. And when the couple finally emerged 2 days later to introduce Archie to the world, they did so from inside Windsor Castle rather than outside the hospital. The baby was swaddled in a way that obscured nearly his entire face, and the image appeared carefully staged, with limited press access and no unscripted moments. It was a presentation completely out of step with every previous royal birth. Compare it to William and Kate's 3 children, each of whom was introduced to the public within hours of delivery, cradled naturally in their parents' arms, in full view of cameras and the public. The difference wasn't merely stylistic. It was deliberate, controlled, as if it had been designed not to show the child, but to suggest that a child existed. Fast forward to 2021, and the same pattern repeated itself with Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor, Harry and Meghan's second child, reportedly born on June 4 in Santa Barbara, California. This time, the birth was not only more private, it was practically invisible. For weeks following her supposed birth, there were no photos, no footage, no sound, no announcement from the hospital. The birth certificate, when finally issued, was again filled with small inconsistencies. Notably, it listed Meghan as Rachel Meghan Markle, her legal name, and Harry as the Duke of Sussex instead of his birth name. These details alone wouldn't normally spark suspicion, but in context, they compounded an already thick fog of secrecy. In a state where birth records are routinely filed and made public, the certificate arrived late. And when it did, many observers noted that it lacked the usual hospital signature and registration confirmation. Additionally, though it confirmed a Santa Barbara hospital as the location, no employees, doctors, or witnesses have ever spoken publicly about the birth. Not a single nurse has been identified. No photographic evidence exists of Meghan entering or exiting the hospital. There are no paparazzi shots of staff wheeling her out in a wheelchair, a common sight even for well-guarded celebrities. It was, essentially, a ghost birth. Worse still, when Meghan's representatives were asked directly by a prominent UK outlet whether any senior royals had met Lilibet, the answer was evasive. The family is aware and has been informed, the spokesperson said. But this didn't answer the question. No photographs ever emerged showing the Queen or Charles holding the child. William and Kate have never publicly acknowledged her. In fact, palace sources later indicated that Harry and Meghan had not made the children available to family members for visits at all. Why then, the need for such extreme secrecy? Some defenders of the couple argue that Harry and Meghan are merely protecting their children from the same media circus that plagued their own lives. But critics counter with a simple truth: countless celebrities have successfully maintained their children's privacy while still offering occasional glimpses of normal life. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard. Even Beyoncé and Jay-Z, arguably more famous than the Sussexes, have allowed small peeks into their family life, candid, humanizing moments that establish authenticity. Meghan and Harry, on the other hand, seem to have constructed a wall so high, it leads him to wonder what's really behind it. The contrast between the public record and the private reality couldn't be starker. Official documents exist, but they raise more questions than they answer. Public images are released, but they feel manufactured and lifeless. The absence of any candid interaction or unscripted footage stands out in an age where authenticity is currency. And that absence is becoming impossible to ignore. Even friends of the couple have made odd, stilted references to the children. During a podcast appearance, one former colleague of Meghan's awkwardly referred to the experience of motherhood Meghan talks about, rather than simply stating she had met the children. Another mutual friend, asked if Archie resembled his father, simply laughed and said, "I wouldn't know," before quickly changing the subject. Compare this to typical behavior among parents. New parents are often eager to share updates, milestones, and memories. While some maintain privacy, the emotional reality of parenthood, the exhaustion, the joy, the chaos, always has a way of leaking through. But with Harry and Meghan, everything is sterile, prepackaged, edited, silent. Their Netflix docuseries, which claim to provide a behind-the-scenes look into their lives, featured only a handful of scenes involving the children. In each, the children were either asleep, turned away, or shown only in distant, nonverbal clips. Lilibet, particularly, was rarely more than a blur or a back-of-the-head profile. The footage was always perfectly lit, always silent, always detached. Is this merely a couple obsessively protecting their family, or is it the symptom of something much more calculated? For royal experts, the implications are enormous. The British line of succession is governed not just by tradition, but by legal recognition. If Archie and Lilibet are not real, or if they are not legally verified offspring of Harry and Meghan, it would create a constitutional crisis. As it stands, Archie is technically 7th in line to the throne. Lilibet is 8th. Their titles and roles may not carry the same weight as their cousins, but their place in history is legally recorded. Or is it? If the public record is based on questionable documentation, if the children have never been seen by trusted royal aides, and if their appearances amount to digital assets and doll stand-ins, what does that say about the integrity of the royal system itself? And more importantly, what does it say about how far two individuals might go to build an image, secure influence, and protect a secret that the world never asked to question, until now? For a family as steeped in tradition, protocol, and institutional control as the British royal family, public silence can often speak louder than words. And when it comes to the matter of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's children, particularly in light of the swirling doubts, inconsistent documentation, and disturbing witness accounts, the royal family's persistent refusal to offer clear public acknowledgement has only deepened the mystery. At first glance, the palace's reaction to the births of Archie and Lilibet may seem reserved but not alarming. Press statements were issued. Congratulatory remarks were made. The official royal website was updated to reflect the births and titles. But beneath this surface of routine formalities lies a noticeable absence of genuine, warm engagement, especially when compared to the excitement and involvement shown for the children of Prince William and Kate Middleton. Take, for instance, the birth of Prince George. Not only were there immediate public statements from the palace, but photographs of the newborn were released within hours. Senior royals, including the Queen, Prince Charles, and Camilla, were seen visiting Kate in the hospital. The public celebrated with fanfare. Bells rang. Gun salutes fired. It was a royal event in every sense of the word. Now compare that to the birth of Archie. There were no hospital visits, no spontaneous reactions from the Queen, no parades of family members holding the infant. And while Buckingham Palace released a brief congratulatory message, it came hours after the press had already reported the birth, and it was oddly subdued. There was no mention of the royal doctors attending the delivery because none had. The Queen's own staff reportedly learned about the birth after the press did. When Archie was finally introduced to the world during a highly orchestrated press photo call inside Windsor Castle, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip were present. But the image shared with the public showed the infant swaddled and nearly invisible. He was held awkwardly, as if being shown without being seen. Even at that early stage, something felt rehearsed, detached. Still, the palace maintained the facade of polite cooperation, at least on the surface. But insiders tell a different story. One former royal aide, speaking on condition of anonymity, described the birth announcement as the beginning of a long and strange series of events that nobody in the palace could quite make sense of. The aide explained that prior to Archie's birth, preparations were made to accommodate Meghan at the Lindo Wing, the same hospital where Kate delivered her children. But Meghan abruptly changed plans and opted for a private hospital without involving the Queen's physicians. The palace was caught off guard, and the media blackout surrounding the birth made everyone uncomfortable. More troubling still was the growing realization that few, if any, senior royals had actually seen Archie in person after the birth. Despite residing at Frogmore Cottage, which was near Windsor Castle and the Queen's primary residence at the time, Meghan and Harry kept to themselves. Staff who had worked with the royal children in the past, including nannies who had served Prince George, were not invited to assist with Archie. No one could confirm the identity of a nanny. No regular palace caregivers were assigned. Later, when Harry and Meghan left the UK and settled in North America, this distance became literal and permanent. The Queen reportedly spoke with Harry via phone on multiple occasions but rarely mentioned the children because she hadn't seen them. And when Lilibet was born in 2021, the Queen again released a muted statement of congratulations. But as reports emerged that she had not yet met the newborn, despite the couple naming the child after her, questions multiplied. Did the Queen even know Lilibet existed? One royal insider alleged that the Queen's reaction to the name Lilibet, her lifelong private nickname within the family, was not one of delight, but discomfort. The source claimed the Queen was never formally asked for permission to use the name, despite Harry and Meghan publicly stating otherwise. The palace declined to comment, which only fueled speculation that the Queen may have felt blindsided or manipulated. In June 2022, during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, the couple traveled to the UK with what they claimed was both of their children. This was meant to be a historic occasion, Lilibet's first in-person meeting with the monarch whose name she bore. The moment was supposed to be monumental. But once again, no photo was taken. No public statement was issued. No witness came forward to confirm the meeting. Not a single royal family member was seen entering or exiting Frogmore Cottage to meet the children. Privately, sources say that senior royals were baffled and disturbed by the secrecy. According to reports, Prince Charles, now King Charles III, expressed concern that he had not seen either child in person. When asked during a private meeting about arranging a family photo, Harry reportedly deflected, claiming the children were asleep or unavailable. Prince William, always more restrained in public, is said to have made his unease clear in private conversations. A former royal protection officer revealed that William had raised questions about the children's whereabouts and expressed frustration at how little contact the family had been allowed to have with them. He found it odd, the officer said. Everyone did. It was like the kids were always just out of reach. Even Princess Anne, known for her blunt and unfiltered nature, is rumored to have voiced skepticism. In a private conversation with a senior staffer, she allegedly asked, "Why is it that no one has seen the children except in photos? It's not natural." The staffer didn't know how to respond because no one had an answer. The royal household, for all its dignity and rigidity, is still made up of individuals, many of whom felt increasingly alienated from the Sussexes, not because of politics or press scandals, but because they couldn't make sense of the children's existence. The staff talked. The questions swirled. But the official line remained the same: silence. By 2023, as questions from the public became more insistent, some royal watchers began demanding a formal response from the palace. Could the Queen, Charles, or William confirm that they had seen Archie and Lilibet in person? Could they release a photo with the children, just once, to quell rumors? But nothing came, not even a denial. Instead, the palace stuck to what it does best: quiet stoicism. Publicly, they congratulated the Sussexes on milestones. Privately, insiders say the concern grew into something bordering on suspicion. One aide described a growing divide between the official story and what many working within the institution actually believed. There was this unspoken thing, he said. We couldn't say it out loud. But the idea that the children might not be real? People were whispering it. A lot. Legal experts have pointed out that the monarchy's unwillingness to confront the matter openly may stem from fear of a constitutional embarrassment. If the legitimacy of royal descendants is challenged in public, it could cause a crisis of confidence in the monarchy's succession and lineage. A public scandal regarding fabricated children would be catastrophic, not just for Harry and Meghan, but for the crown itself. And so, the palace remains boxed in. To confirm the children's existence, they would need to produce evidence, something they may not have. To accuse Harry and Meghan of deception, they would need to admit they had been fooled, or worse, complicit. And to remain silent, as they have, only invites more speculation. It is a uniquely modern royal scandal, one shaped not by affairs, divorces, or abdications, but by absence of sound, of sight, of proof. And the royal family's response, or lack thereof, is becoming part of the story. As the institution that places enormous value on appearances and tradition, the fact that the Queen, King Charles, and other senior royals have allowed years to pass without any public interaction with the Sussex children is telling. The silence is now louder than any denial would be. The absence more haunting than any poorly worded statement. And for many watching from the outside, the conclusion is growing hard to avoid. If the royal family truly believed the children were real, why hasn't a single moment of shared joy, celebration, or candid family time emerged? Why, after years of opportunity, have Harry and Meghan's children remained hidden, not just from the public, but seemingly from their own family? As disturbing as the idea of fabricated children may seem, it prompts a deeper, far more uncomfortable question. Why would anyone, even a globally recognized couple like Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, go to such extraordinary lengths to create the illusion of children that may not exist? What could possibly motivate such a high-risk deception? And more importantly, how could they sustain it for years without being exposed? To understand the possible motives behind such a massive fabrication, we have to look beyond emotion and into the world of image, influence, and power. From the moment Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal life in 2020, they rebranded themselves not just as celebrities, but as public figures with a purpose. They began crafting a narrative built around trauma, healing, injustice, and rebirth. At the center of this new identity was their family unit, the persecuted couple who had escaped an oppressive monarchy to raise their children in peace and dignity. Children, in this context, were not just part of their story. They were the core of it. And that gave them immense narrative power. In every major interview, from the bombshell Oprah Winfrey special to their Netflix docuseries and Spotify appearances, parenthood has been used as a lens to highlight their grievances and reinforce their credibility. Archie became a symbol of what they were trying to protect. Lilibet, named after the Queen, became a living link between the old monarchy and the new, progressive future they were supposedly building. But the emotional weight of that symbolism only works if the children are real, vulnerable, and at risk. So what if, hypothetically, the children weren't real, but the emotional leverage was too valuable to give up? In the world of media, children humanize. They soften images. They evoke protection, innocence, and warmth. For a couple often cast as divisive and controversial, having children made them more sympathetic. It framed Meghan's allegations of racism in a new light, a mother fearing for her mixed-race child. It gave Harry moral urgency in his crusade against the British tabloids, a father demanding privacy and respect for his children's future. Without the children, those stories carry less gravity. But with them, even as vague, unseen figures, they become matters of moral importance. The couple becomes not just outspoken, but courageous. not just estranged from the royal family, but victims of a larger injustice. This kind of emotional framing isn't accidental. It's a deliberate tool in the arsenal of modern media strategy. And Meghan, in particular, is no stranger to image control. Before marrying into royalty, she was a Hollywood actress, well-versed in crafting persona. Once inside the royal system, she quickly learned the mechanics of palace PR and how to push back against it. If Meghan understood that the Sussex brand would depend on their perceived integrity and emotional connection to the public, then crafting a story around family, children, and struggle was a masterstroke. But there are more concrete, strategic motives as well. One of the primary benefits of royal status, even after stepping back from official duties, is the title. And not just the title of Duke and Duchess, but the hereditary lineage that follows. Archie and Lilibet, as biological children of Prince Harry, are entitled to royal titles, protections, and in some interpretations, positions within the line of succession. This carries with it symbolic prestige, but also financial and legal value. Having children allowed Harry and Meghan to leverage these rights in negotiations. From production deals with Netflix and Spotify to their partnerships with publishing houses and philanthropic platforms, the family narrative became a key selling point. Who would buy a memoir about leaving the royal family if it didn't also include reflections on fatherhood? Who would sign a multi-million-dollar content deal with Meghan if not for her perspective as a mother balancing public pressure with family life? The children justified their new image as freedom-seeking, truth-telling modern royals. This also played directly into American media culture, where family is often used as a moral compass. Political campaigns, celebrity endorsements, and philanthropic initiatives all lean heavily on family values. Meghan and Harry, aware of their controversial image, needed something to offset the criticism. The children became that shield. But the benefits didn't end there. There are also legal implications. In the United States, children born to foreign nationals with royal ties may qualify their parents for certain residency and tax advantages. While Meghan is American by birth, Harry is not, establishing roots in the U.S. through an American-born child, or two, could play a role in visa strategy, estate planning, and long-term residency status. It also creates a legal tether between Harry and U.S. jurisdiction, something many suspect he intended to cement once the break from Britain was finalized. And then there's the matter of inheritance and trust funds. It's no secret that royal family members receive considerable financial inheritance. From Prince Charles's Duchy of Cornwall revenues to Queen Elizabeth's private wealth, royal heirs are often provided for through a network of intergenerational trusts and estates. While Harry may have retained access to some of these funds, there's strong evidence to suggest that provisions were made for his children as well. Having legitimate heirs, even on paper, could secure long-term financial security. In a scenario where the monarchy might one day reconcile with Harry, or at least seek to maintain bloodline continuity, Archie and Lilibet serve as insurance. They ensure Harry's branch of the family remains in the royal record, even if estranged. But perhaps the most compelling motive is the control it gives Meghan and Harry over the narrative. The ambiguity surrounding the children creates a powerful paradox. It fuels speculation while also giving them moral high ground. They can claim to be victims of media intrusion anytime questions arise. They can denounce critics as conspiracy theorists or racists. They can assert that they are protecting their family, while in truth offering no evidence that such a family exists beyond curated images and blanket-covered bundles. The media is left chasing shadows, and every attempt to clarify only strengthens their claim to victimhood. It's a loop that rewards silence and punishes transparency. Still, even with all these potential motives, one must ask, how would something this elaborate be maintained? The answer lies in money, influence, and the selective use of technology. With access to high-end doll manufacturers, professional photographers, and the best in digital editing, the couple would have every resource necessary to simulate child appearances for controlled release. Pair that with a tight inner circle, non-disclosure agreements, and private property protected by security teams, and the probability of internal leaks becomes almost non-existent. Even their staff, nannies, assistants, drivers, are carefully vetted. Anyone who signs on to work with the Sussexes is bound by legal contracts that prohibit any disclosure of private details. Those who violate the terms face lawsuits, ruined reputations, and industry blacklisting. In a media landscape that moves fast and forgets quickly, all they need to do is maintain the illusion long enough to stay ahead of the next scandal, the next distraction, the next interview. And for the last 5 years, that strategy has worked. Despite whispers, despite leaked testimonies from flight crews and palace insiders, despite the utter absence of candid footage or spontaneous public moments with the children, the world still largely accepts the idea that Archie and Lilibet are real. Why? Because no one wants to believe otherwise. Because the alternative is too uncomfortable. Because the lie, if it is a lie, has become too big to question. But if the theory holds, if these children are dolls, or digital projections, or stand-ins, then the motive is not simply to deceive. It's to control perception, to build an unbreakable brand, to turn fiction into fact, emotion into equity, and silence into strategy. And that is a motive more potent than any financial incentive. It's a motive that makes sense in a world where reality is shaped not by truth, but by the stories people are willing to believe. Tonight, a shocking claim from inside the cabin of a private jet has turned the royal world upside down. A flight attendant is speaking out, saying the children on board never moved, never cried, and one, quote, didn't even blink. Are Harry and Meghan hiding something far bigger than a family feud? From sealed-off flights to eerie photo evidence, we're unpacking the disturbing possibility that their kids may be lifelike dolls. Stay with us as we dive into the testimonies, digital forensics, and royal silence that's raising global alarm. This isn't gossip. It's a mystery begging for answers.